Oh, thanks, Drew. Let's go ahead and get started. Drew, next slide. Those of you who are current UPK providers, you certainly are very familiar with this team at this point. Shay Almonte is the Foundation's program director. She's currently on maternity leave, and I am filling in as the UPK manager until she returns. Heather Mayhew and Carla Rivera Ramirez are two of our family resource navigators on the team. They are jacks of all trade, but really specialize in working with families and helping them to find a suitable UPK spot for them. Drew is our pre-K assistant, and he is universal pre-K assistant, and he is even more of a jack of all trades, and generally monitors the UPK email and phone, and gets your questions to the right place if he can't answer them. And Ryan Berry is our data specialist, and he is the one that makes sure that we have all of the information that we need to make really good decisions, and that we also know where we have capacity issues as well as where we have seats for families who have not already been matched. So that's our team. So our agenda for today is welcome and introductions, which we've just done. We're going to provide you an update from CDEC and allow you to ask some questions around all of that. So CDEC sends to us as the LCO a slide deck every month that they want to make sure that we are communicating with you and able to answer your questions in real time if you have any. So that's the slide deck we're going to go through. I have combined November's and December's because we have no plan to do a December roundtable. We will do that if something comes up that is urgent, but at the moment we have both November and December combined together. Then we want to give you what we know or think we know about year 2 for UPK, and also get some feedback from you and answer any additional questions that you may have. So let's dive in. Next slide. So the first thing we're going to talk about is enrollment guidance and walk-in enrollment. So as you all know by now, if you are a UPK provider, the deferred algorithm is no longer running, and the last time that it ran was on November the 6th. That means that any matches that were made during that time should have expired by November the 16th. If a family did not accept or decline a match, they went back into selected status for that. And we are in the process right now of going through and analyzing the families that did not either accept or decline, and figure out whether or not they're still interested in UPK, and if they are, trying to get them to an open seat, and if they are not, trying to get them out of the system as an active participant so that we can focus in on those who need to be assisted. So families who still need a seat have 2 paths to receive help. They can reach out directly to you as a provider, and if you have a seat available, you can tell the family that you're happy to accept them, and then you reach out to us at JI and to have the student accepted in the portal. So you can reach out at upk@joininitiatives.org, or you, if that is not your pleasure, you can send it directly to me at nglt@mac.com. We have plenty of people who are monitoring that, and we'll take care of the situation for you. What I would ask is you send it to one or the other, not both, because then we end up doing double work. So choose a path and send it there. CPCD, wait a minute. Thank you. CPCD, you need to send it to me. Families can, the other part of this says that families can reach out to JI. They can, but we are not placing or accepting any students without your input. So if somebody reaches out to us and they say that they want to be unenrolled at this place and enrolled at this place, or they're interested in this particular seat, we are going to send them to their first choice. and give you the opportunity to reach out to that family and make sure that it is a good fit, rather than us accepting them and them just showing up on your list and not quite sure what to do with it. So the second part of this does not really apply in terms of how we're handling it. If they reach out to us, we're going to send them to their first choice first and give you the opportunity to address it from there. Okay. So we've had questions around choosing a start date, how to figure out what the enrollment date is in the child's file, etc. So when you choose a start date, you need to keep in mind the payment schedule and make sure that the family is aware of any upfront out-of-pocket tuition that they have to pay until the UPK funding kicks in. So let's take an example here. If you have a family that you have enrolled on, let's say December the 1st, and they are actually in enrolled status on December the 15th, you will be paid for that family for January on January the 8th. So if you enroll them on December the 1st, that's great, but you're not getting paid for December. So you need to discuss that with the family and make your own decision about how you handle that. So because the UPK payment starts on January the 8th for January. So make sure that they're aware of that and keep that in mind. Next, please. So we're going to show you how you can see the enrollment form start date, basically, just in case there's any questions on that. By the way, this slide deck is, if it isn't already, it is up on our UPK page on joint initiatives. So you will have all of this available to you, as well as the recording of this meeting. So this basically talks about where you can see what. I want to go to the next slide, which is more visual. So in your when you click on the family's the child's enrollment form, it will show you the child name, the ID number, and the date of birth. And then it will also show you the provider name and the start date that was selected on the enrollment form. You selected that start date, okay? And then it shows the program that the child is enrolled in. And then the date, the date that's below that just shows the date of last status change, likely from accepted to enrollment. But at any point that you change the status of the child, or that status was changed by us at your request, that's the last date that the status was changed. So that's how you can tell what the enrollment start date is. Okay. So, been a lot of questions about when providers should enroll and unenroll. So you should enroll children as close to the actual start date as possible. So this ensures accurate payments, and if it also is really helpful when a family is changing providers. So a family who is changing providers, that absolutely can happen, and we absolutely can support that. But a family cannot be in an accepted status one place and enrolled in another. It cannot be an enrolled status in two places. So the family has to be unenrolled in one place and before they can be enrolled in the other. So the family obviously needs to be the conduit there in terms of what they're doing, communication. But we have found sometimes that that's not always the case. We will not unenroll a family from your program unless the family has told us that they are no longer attending and you have not yet unenrolled them, or you tell us to unenroll them. Okay, so but we cannot let families sit in an enrolled status when they are not attending. So you have to change the student status in the portal to unenrolled within 1 week. of their last day. Now, there are times where we have had providers that for whatever reason are not able to unenroll. And so you would reach out to us and say, I need to unenroll this child. Their last day was X. And then we always want to know if the child has moved out of town, they are no longer interested in UPK, et cetera, because once you unenroll them, if they have not reached out to us and said that they're going to another provider or they've moved or something of that sort, we automatically assume that they need additional support. So then our family navigators start going through and calling these parents, and it saves us time and the parent being bugged if you already know the reason that the family is unenrolling. And if you can communicate with that to us, then we can put a note in the child's file, and we can leave the family alone and make sure that they're not inadvertently being placed or matched someplace else. So let's see. Yep. Oh, if you have a family who is leaving your program, CDEC will honor the policy in your handbook. So here's what that means. So if you have a written policy in your handbook that says that the family must give you 2 weeks notice, you can unenroll after those 2 weeks. Okay, so you can keep them on the roll up until those 2 weeks or whatever period it is that you have in your handbook. After that, you must unenroll them. However, that family cannot enroll someplace else up until that time. So, it would be better if you gave the family the option to pay you for those 2 weeks so that they can enroll someplace else. It might be less expensive for them. I know that's a difficult conversation to have, but the one thing that cannot happen is we cannot have a family enrolled in 2 places at once. So work that out, please, as best you possibly can. And please over communicate with us so that we can put something in the file and let them know, and then make sure that we're supporting families in the way that they need to be supported. Next. Qualifying factors, as I think you all know by now who are UPK providers, and we do have a couple on here that are thinking about becoming UPK providers for year 2. So that's why I'm qualifying that. For this year, low income, and one of those qualifying factors that is up there is what will qualify. So for 3-year-olds, they must have one of those qualifying factors, and they have to go to the school district. You as a private UPK provider cannot enroll 3-year-olds through UPK. You can enroll them in any tuition-based slot like you normally would, but they receive no UPK support unless they are going to the school district, and the school district has a contract with a community provider to be able to serve 3-year-olds. And 4-year-olds have to have, in order to get additional hours, has to have a qualifying factor in addition to being low income. So we're going to discuss that a little bit more in a few minutes. Okay, go ahead. So here's the additional hours award. The CDEC is going through and looking at these monthly. So if a family adds in an eligibility factor that qualifies them for additional hours, you as the provider on your enrollment report will see that under the column entitled awarded additional hours. And if it says yes, it means that family has 30 hours. And each month's pay file shows students who were awarded additional hours. They can contact us if they need to add qualifying factors to their application. Okay, next. So let's talk a little bit about payments. You guys have all seen this payment schedule. I think the thing that I want to point out here is the fact that from now on, anyone who enrolls after the 15th of the month, there are no longer any half-month rates. So you will be getting your half-month rate for for October in December. And it will come in a separate file from your normal monthly payments. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, but now there are no more half-month payments. This schedule is up on the UPK site anytime that you would like to look at it. Next. So as a reminder, from December payment and beyond, you're only being paid for children where the enrollment form is completed and the enrollment start date aligns with the payment period. Okay. And it's your responsibility to verify the child's date of birth and the Colorado residency at the time of enrollment. So we have had a challenge with the fact that in this system for this year, 3-year-olds were able to pick 4-year-old programs. And we have been trying to catch those and make sure that they get enrolled as a 3-year-old into their school district. But if we don't catch it and they come to you and they are not eligible for kindergarten in the following year, and you have been paid for, and they are not eligible, you must unenroll that child. And any payment, you will not be getting any back payment for that child. So if you inadvertently enroll a 3-year-old in what you think is a UPK slot and do not charge the parent accordingly, then unfortunately you're out that tuition. And I will also remind you that any payment issues that you have to go to Metrics IQ. We're here to help explain it to you, to do whatever we can to help you understand it better, but we cannot change it and we cannot authorize back payments. We can't do any of that. So it has to go to Metrics IQ. Okay. And as we were talking about with the staggered payments, there are the standard monthly payments, which we have talked about. And then there are the delayed payments for late enrollments at the half-month rate. And this is the final month for you receiving that. And as this slide says, payments do come staggered. So please allow time for all of your payments to be made to you before contacting us or Metrics. Okay, they're not necessarily going to come at the same time. All right, next. So we have communicated to you what CDEC has said are the allowable use of funds, and want to make sure that you are aware of these. So can be used to cover the following general education and special education costs. You can all read, so there's no reason for me to read this to you, but this is what you can use the money for. And you know, school districts are aware that they cannot be used money for K through 12 expenses, and that any underspent must be held in reserve for the Universal Preschool Program, preschool services, and coded as such. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out and we'll get the answers if we can do that. So there are a bunch of provider resources that are available to you through your provider login. And again, this slide is difficult to read, and I get that, but it is up on the UPK page. And so there, you know, you're going to log in using your email address associated with the licensing system. And then you're going to look for participating provider guidance and all of the pieces that are in there. We have tried to make sure that all of these are also up on the UPK page. So if you have an issue, then try going to the UPK page. And if you still can't get it addressed, then please reach out to us and we will assist you in any way we can. I've had a lot of questions about capacity building grants and the provider bonuses. Those applications are now being reviewed and will be distributed by the end of December. So there is a link to a provider bonus fact sheet here if you would like to look at that at some point. And that's what we know at this point, is that they will all be distributed by the end of December. Okay, I want to stop there for a minute and see if any of you have any questions about this year's stuff, that either what we have covered or not covered. Feel free to either unmute yourself and ask the question, put it in the chat, whatever you would like to do. Okay, I'm not seeing that anybody has any questions or their hand raised or anything of that sort. So I'm going to assume that everything that we've covered so far, you are happy with. All right, let's talk a little bit about year two from the perspective of CDEC at this point. They're in the process of reviewing the feedback on the quality standards. That feedback portal closed on November 22nd. So hopefully you submitted whatever feedback you wanted to provide with regard to that. They will then be moving things on to rulemaking, basically based on the feedback. And so please remember that none of these quality standards are going into effect this year. They go into effect on 24-25, and they will be phased in over time. So there are certain things that will be in effect 24-25 and certain things that will not be in effect 24-25, but are scheduled to be implemented over time. So keep up with that. We've got all of that stuff up on the UPK page again, and we will continue to make sure that we keep it as updated as we possibly can. Okay, and you probably all saw, at least I hope you saw, that there is an emergency rule around a new qualifying factor for 30 hours. So those families who are considered to be low income are automatically, so right now, low income is the baseline for an additional 30 hours. And then they have to have one of the other qualifying factors. This is adding in another qualifying factor that has to do with income, that says if a family is low income and also their income is at or below the federal poverty level, then they are automatically eligible for 30 hours. So that just means that the lowest income families that will be eligible for 30 hours. All right, any questions on that? Okay, let's stop sharing, Drew. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we think, what we hope we know about year two. And then want to talk with you about the things that you want to make sure we bring forward as part of the year two planning. What we think we know is that, well, let's put it this way. Ryan and I went to an in-person Southeast LCO meeting about a month ago, and McKenna Rollhold, who is in charge of all of the LCOs in the state, was there along with our state contact, Jenny. And one of the things that they talked about was that they were trying to figure out their timeline, and that they hoped that their timeline would be that providers will enroll in the program in January. And But I do know that there is not going to be any rollover or profiles or anything of that sort. You're going to have to redo everything because they're trying to make this a more user-friendly for both families and providers. And so they want to ask you different kinds of questions and present it in a different way for families, et cetera, et cetera. So it will not look the same as it looks for this year in the provider portal, and it will not look the same for families. The application will not look the same. They're trying to take the feedback that they've had and address those things. So you should plan on the fact that you actually have to re-enroll in UPK, or if you're a new provider, enroll. And you should plan that you will have to do that in January. My guess is that because they are not willing to commit to the January timeframe even today, that it may be later than that, but we don't want to be in the same situation that we were in last year, where all of a sudden you were told you had to have all decisions made and everything in by January 17th, and then it was almost impossible to change things after that in a timely manner. So start planning for what you want to do for UPK for next year, and be ready to go in January. And as soon as we have a time frame, of course, we are going to let you know. And but I still think you should plan for January, and if it's later than that, it gives you a little bit more time. They're thinking if they enrolled in January was that they were then going to do what they call priority enrollment for families in February. So that would mean that families that you are already serving who are not yet eligible as a 4-year-old, but would be eligible next year. Those that are have siblings in attending with you and will be eligible next year. And when children who are children of your employees, those are priority placements. And that they're thinking that they're going to separate that out from open enrollment, if you will, and that they're going to do priority placements first. So you might want to start thinking about what that list looks like for you, and make sure that those families who are going to be UPK eligible, that they have the opportunity and are aware of the need to enroll in UPK during that time frame in order to ensure that they have a seat with you. It will also help you determine how many seats you want in UPK. So those are all things that you should be thinking about if you're not already. And then their thought was that they would start open enrollment in March. And that would be families that do not have priority placement, or of course, those that have priority placement but didn't do it in February, then obviously they can get in there at any point. They're just not guaranteed a seat. So that was the plan that they laid out a month ago. There was some feedback even within our group around that. They also talked about how often the algorithm would be run, and they are planning to publish a schedule for when the algorithm will run, instead of just saying, okay, now we're going to run it here. No, we're really not. So that will be good, so that we can all plan for that purpose. We don't think it will be run as often as it was this year. So that will also be interesting to see how all that works out. And yeah, that's what was talked about a month ago. We have pushed for a more definitive timeline and have not been able to get anyone to commit to one at this point. I'm sure that will happen as soon as they are able to run it through the gabillion levels that they have to run it through. So they are also trying to be very intentional around what they do this time around. They're trying to get as much stakeholder feedback as they can and make sure that they have thought everything through before they do it. And that's all great and well, but I think it's going to be challenging for them to meet the timelines that they have put out there if that's what they choose to do, particularly with the holidays in there. But we'll see. I mean, maybe they will meet the timeline. So that's what we believe is happening for the coming year. So I would like to answer any questions, or at least try to answer any questions you may have. If we can't answer them, I will write them down, of course. And also would like to hear about the things that you struggled with this year that you would like to see done differently for next year. Donna?
Sorry, can you hear me? All righty. So just one quick question about the priority enrollment. So for families who are continuing, are they going to they're going to have to complete a new application? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll need to make sure that goes out. Now, is it going to include where they put that continuity of care field? Is that how that's going to look, or do we even know that?
I don't know. Exactly. I mean, they're going to need to choose a provider, right? But if they're coming in with into priority placement, my guess is they're going to have to say, my child's already attending there, or my child has a sibling who is attending there, or my child is an employee of, I'm employed there and my child is attending there.
Okay. So, and I mean, you probably don't know this, but I'm guessing that, I mean, any family, whether they're priority or not, has a likelihood of stumbling upon that enrollment unless it's only going out to families that are currently being served.
I think it's going to be more driven by providers reaching out to their families who are eligible to be in that situation.
Okay. All right. And I have feedback, but I'll just wait and see if other people have questions, and you can tell me how you want to get.
Sure. Sure. What other questions do you have? What is you most concerned about next year? This is your chance, folks. We're sending this list up to the state from El Paso County. So, okay, Donna, why don't you go ahead and weigh in?
Okay, so a couple of things, just from our team, what's worked well, and I know this probably isn't going to continue, or it's not because of the algorithm and stuff, but the way we're placing now is working beautifully because it gives us more control. Where, families, because I think the challenge that we have had is families signing up for the wrong program that either one, they're not eligible for, right? So if it's a full-time or whatever, or they're super confused by what part-time and half-day mean, or by the time that you reach out to them to complete your application and you go over what the schedule is, the schedule doesn't work. So there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of time lost because families don't have the information that they need upfront. And it's frustrating both on the provider's end and also the family's end. So that's kind of one thing. If there would be a way for providers to be able to see if families have actually applied for UPK, because there's a lot of back and forth and time wasted there as well. So, just being able to log in and let the family know, actually, yes, you did apply and here's what you've selected versus us having to reach out to you guys. Let's see. I have some more, but let me give somebody else a chance so I can look at my notes.
I was just going to echo that. One of the challenges we found, Noreen, and I think I've shared this with you before, when you, in the provider portal, when we put in our information, we indicated that we were a Head Start and early Head Start provider through our partnership. which then immediately put that tag on every page that said, you may have to income qualify to participate in our program, which, as you know, for our particular program isn't the case. And so anything that we can do to personalize more in that provider portal, I'm actually really excited that we have to redo it because it needed a lot of work. And I think that'll be a great opportunity for us to make it more accurate as to what it is that we're actually offering. There's a lot of confusion, just like Donna said.
Okay. How about the rest of you?
I agree with Donna and Liz, so it's really the same situations and struggles that happen. Better understand the system now as well, so I'll be looking forward to the new changes and less confusion. So they pretty much hit all of the struggles that we went through for this year. So it's getting better now. I understand it better, so I appreciate all of that one-on-one we had to do for a while there, but gotten on track now.
Yep, new program makes it hard.
I wonder too, Noreen, and I don't think that this was addressed when you were talking about the changes that are coming. From the parents' perspective, setting expectations, you've now applied for UPK, you should be keeping an eye on your email for the next 5 days to watch for your next step and your next step. Something that lets parents know. I feel like that was a big drop in communication, that we were waiting for parents to check their emails to see and click the button to accept the match, whether or not they paid attention to even what email address they put in to be their contact information. I think that the level of participation from the parent perspective wasn't very clear to parents.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there was a lot of feedback provided to the state about the type of communication that was going out to parents, how clear it was, whether it was going out in a timely manner. I know one of the things that they are doing is that they're not going to use a telephone number anymore. It's only going to be email, because every family has an email address. And so, and if they don't, they can easily get one for free. And so, so they're not going to use telephone numbers anymore. I mean, the telephone number will be in there to be able to contact the family, but they're not going to use that in terms of the way they communicate. Every communication from the state around UPK is going out via email, not text. So I think, that way families will know it's going to your email, right? And they won't be fishing around trying to figure out whether they got a text or didn't, and all the rest of that. So I think that'll help simplify things a little bit. And I will also say that, as you guys become more savvy around what all of this looks like, you can also help communicate with parents. Hey, you're going to need to do this and this and this, right? I mean, half the time we didn't even know what was going out to families, right? So so now I think it has become clearer to the state that the folks that are supporting families and getting enrolled have to know what is going out to families so that they can then address it.
Also, just, our non-English speaking community, our Spanish speakers, and then of course those of other languages, we saw lots of hiccups and families falling through the cracks because they're just, information wasn't translated. So that's a big piece, or it was in some cases and not in others.
Right.
And I think I already said this, but really clarifying the difference between half day and full day, or no, half day and part-time, because it took me a long time to just figure that out, and families are just lost in the sauce with that one. And I'm going to pause so I can look more and
yeah, I'm not I'm not exactly sure how the state is going to handle, explanation of the various programs. Again, I think, it really does have to be a partnership between the providers and the LCO and the state in terms of how you set up your profile. And do you explain on your profile, the models and the hours that you're offering at that particular location. And I know it's very difficult in January to decide what your hours are going to be in August. And I absolutely get that. But that's the way it works. And so whenever those things change, then you're going to have families that it doesn't work for, and that they thought it would, and it's just the way it's going to happen. So this does force you guys into a little bit more preparation and planning and a lot earlier than, and I'm talking about all of you, not you, Donna, but everybody, all providers, into a little bit more planning and a little less we'll figure it out when we get to August, or we'll figure it out when we get to July. And if that's what has to happen, then there are going to be changes. I mean, it's not going to work for some families and who signed up. So,
right. And I think the other thing too, also, and maybe making the provider where we can put that information a little bit more user friendly, because, at a site where we have one classroom, it's very easy to put the time. But when we have a center that has 9 classrooms and there's varying models, it's about this, the description is about this long, and parents don't understand that anyway. So maybe as part of feedback, maybe they can make some updates to that to allow, programs who have multiple whatever, so that it's easier for families to read, kind of as a suggestion. The other thing too, I'm excited to hear about the, rule with the living in poverty. This year's application, basically asked, do you make less than this amount, right? But if it can drill down even further, like how many, total are in your family, right? Because that's, or
it has it on there.
Okay. All right, I'll have to look at that again. Maybe I'm not making, I just know that it was, again, just thinking about our program and the qualifications, unfortunately we were getting families specifically for full day that just weren't eligible based on income, and it created frustration for them and us, and then they had to go back and forth. So just a way to try and reduce that.
Yeah. And I just want to remind you really quickly, Donna, that CPCD is an anomaly. I'm serious. I mean, Liz's classrooms all start and end at the same time, and families come in and leave whenever it is they choose to come in and leave within their guidelines. Irma's families do exactly the same thing. KinderCare does the same thing, et cetera. And so CPCD with part day, half day, and full day, and the full day definition is not what most parents think a full day is just an anomaly. And, again, they can't build a system around CPCD or the very, very, very few programs out there that are as complex as CPCD.
No, I get it. And we're going to try and streamline that a little bit too.
Right.
So,
right.
And then just, and this may have come up in the district one, but if there's a way for families to obviously identify the school district that they live in, right? Because some families don't even know, they think they live in D2, but it's really 11. And especially if the boundaries are close, kind of like how school districts have the school finder. So that might be helpful for families as well.
So my understanding is that there's a a locator, if you will, and that it will automatically determine eligibility for that child based on that school district's school cutoff date. So I don't think it's going to be up to the family to determine which school district they live in. That's just one more thing that the family would have to do that most of them are not going to do unless they obviously know. So I think they're going to build that into the system. What else? Do you have any payment concerns? Should I get you started on payment concerns? Okay. You've either gotten, my husband's grandmother used to say, you can get used to hanging if you hang long enough. So you've either gotten used to things being challenging and you figured out a way around them, which good for you, because that's pretty much what you had to do this year. But, I would really like for you to think about what could be and what you would want to be. Let's put it on the list.
Well, I think revisiting what was initially announced at the beginning of the process of paying upon available slots, paying in advance, paying for the first 3 months or the first month of available slots versus paying upon enrollment, that was significantly challenging for us, in addition to the changing between the qualifying factors. And I realize it's completely driven by the funding from the state. I get that. I would love to see some sort of timeline on how far in advance changes can be made, or the change from for the qualifying factors. We had less than 30 days notice that this was going to happen, which was a significant budgetary impact to all of us. That's really challenging to navigate if we can't plan for it and know that we have, if the state's going to change something, we'll have 60 days to figure it out, or we'll have whatever, not in July. Oh, by the way, August 9th, this is what you're going to experience.
Yep.
I'm really concerned about recruiting new UPK providers. I really think that the people who sat back this year because they were concerned about what that the state might change things, now maybe saying, see, I told you so, and are again maybe not going to become a UPK provider should we find the need that we have more children than we have providers for, if we are trying to recruit additional providers into the field, or into the fold. The first year wasn't a very good selling point from the provider perspective.
Yeah, I understand that, but you would be surprised how many people are reaching out to me right now that are either new providers that want to become a UPK provider or are new to UPK. That's
great. I'm glad to hear that.
Exactly. So, it was not a challenge. It was a challenging year. I think that there were, there were some things that were, really difficult. And I do think that the state has done a really good job of accepting the feedback. And I think it's also up to providers to remember that, this system cannot be all things to all providers. It has to meet the needs of the largest percentage of providers, and those for whom it does not meet the needs, you've got a couple of choices. Either you can let us work with you to help you figure out how to make it work, or you can choose not to be a UPK provider. Obviously, I would prefer the first, but it's not going to work for everybody. We are working really hard to try to get the state to be a little bit more friendly to family childcare homes. And I think that is happening. I think that there is some recognition there that was not necessarily there before. And we are also doing a lot of advocating around, this whole system cannot be driven by the needs of school districts. It's a multi variety system. And so, it has to work for center-based providers, home providers, and school districts. So I really do think that the state has heard that. I think the frustrating thing at this point for me is that they are being so deliberate because of all the frustration around last minute changes, unintended consequences, all the rest of that now they are being very deliberate around making sure that they have thought these changes through and that they realize where the maybe potential negative consequences are going to be, but the positive outcomes are going to far outweigh that. And so I think they're also trying to be much more family friendly at this point. And I do know that family application is going to change significantly. So I'm hoping that, you're going to come away from this saying year 2 was a lot better than year 1. But I'm also sure that you're going to have some things that you're going to say, wow, that should have been addressed again, kind of thing. And, yeah, I get it. We all get it. So.
With all that being said, has there been any talk about childcare centers and our 3-year-olds and why that's only for school districts?
Yep. So here's the reason why, Irma. So the UPK legislation was initially meant for the year before kindergarten. It was meant for 4-year-olds. Okay. And it got expanded to 3-year-olds because of the Colorado preschool program. And the Colorado preschool program previously only went to school districts, right? And so, so in order to keep school districts whole and allow 3-year-olds to be served, they decided to follow the model of the Colorado preschool program and only send the 3-year-old money to school districts. And that money is based on the number of 3-year-olds that they served in CPP in the previous year. So it was to hold school districts whole and to make sure that the school districts, the children with at least one eligibility factor could still be served with some support like they were in the CPP program. So it was expanded specifically because of the pushback for 3-year-olds. They were being basically, cut off as a result of previously they were able to be served in CPP, both 3 and 4-year-olds. And they were in this legislation, they were about to be essentially cut off. And so they added that in there, but universal preschool is a 4-year-old program. It is meant to be for children the year before kindergarten. That will not change. It is not going to, the legislation does not allow for that, and it is not going to change. So you still have the ability to serve 3-year-olds. It's just that you would charge them in the way you always have before. Yeah, but that's the rationale. It was never meant to be a 3-year-old program. So without a change in the legislation, that's not going to happen.
Okay, because I know District 2 wasn't even offering the CPP program. It was just District 11, the closest I got. So that's why I was just curious. So thank you.
What do you mean they weren't offered the CPP program?
Just that they wasn't offering it in my meetings.
Oh, no, they're not offering it because their CPP slots were under contract to CPCD, who did all of their preschool, 3 and 4-year-olds.
Okay, that wasn't told to me, but that's what they had told me. So
no.
Okay.
And so so they got all the 3-year-old money for this year, and that 3-year-old money is still under contract to CPCD.
Well, that makes sense. Okay.
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 They may change that next year, who knows? But for this year, a year ago, they made the decision that CPCD was going to continue to be their only community partner, and that they would continue to serve the 3 and 4-year-olds, and that they would fund the 3-year-olds through the money that they got for 3-year-olds for UPK.
Thanks.
Don't believe everything you hear.
Evidently not, because that would have been an easy way to explain it to me than just saying we don't offer the program in the community.
Yeah. Well, nobody offers the program in the community anymore
Well,
because,
right, anymore,
right?
but yeah.
Right. Yeah. So,
Okay.
all right. So what other questions or comments do you have?
I got a direct question in the chat here from a Zoom user. They don't have a voice, so they can't really chime in. The question is centered around CCAP and kids with low income profiles, if they're able to apply. Noreen, have you heard any recent guidance between CCAP and UPK applications for year 2?
We have not yet heard how that's going to work for year 2. CCAP is under revision right now, and so just in terms of some of the overall state guidelines and rules and things of that sort, there's a whole committee at the state level that's working on that. So right now, what is happening is if a family at their authorization, when they apply, says that they need full day services, and they meet the work requirement, then they're going to get authorized for full day. That means, but they can still be in a UPK spot. And it actually helps the provider if they are, because it doesn't change anything for the family. They still have to pay their parent copay, but it does change things for the provider and gives them more resources to be able to increase their salaries, etc. So for next year, there may be a stacking situation with that, meaning UPK will be the first in dollars and CCAP will be the second in dollars. But we have no indication of that at this point. So I don't know what is going to happen there. So it's a long-winded saying of, you got me.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I want to thank you all for being a part of UPK this year, for hanging in there with us when things were very frustrating, but for reaching out for help when you needed it, for continuing to figure it out, for communicating as best you can. I hope that we have been supportive. That was always our goal all along. And we continue to do that, and make sure that you've signed up for the UPK newsletter, and keep your eye out for updates on upcoming timelines and things that need to be done. And if you want to chat further about next year and UPK in your center with your business model, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to set up a time to do that. It's nglt@mac.com. So thank you all for being here, and reach out if you need anything else.
Thank you.